So I'm up here on Culp's Hill. This part of the Gettysburg battlefield is rarely visited, and it's kind of a pet peeve of mine because it's where my home area kind of gets pooped on, for lack of a better word. There's a reason why I'm wearing a Binghamton Mets sweatshirt while I record this. Yes, it was a cold morning in late September, and I had spent the time before this walking around with Matt and the rest of the Addressing Gettysburg crew. But as Rod Serling once said, everybody's got a hometown, and Binghamton's mine. While I technically may have been raised in Vestal and Johnson City, I did get my master's degree at Binghamton U, and I consider the Triple Cities area, of which Binghamton is the center of it, to be my hometown. Let's stop for a minute and look at the bigger picture. The Battle of Gettysburg was fought between the Union, or Northern Army, and the Confederate, or Southern Army, in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, on July 1st through the 3rd, 1863. The first day of the battle went very well for the Confederates, but they failed to capture several hills to the south of the town. Throughout the morning of July 2nd, both armies planned and waited. Our focus is going to be on Culp's Hill, which is on the northeast end of the battlefield. For those who follow the battle closely, remember this hill was supposed to be captured by the Confederates on the end of July 1st, but they decided that they didn't really have the manpower or organization to do it. So most of the day of July 2nd, the Union 12th Corps is up here. During the afternoon of July 2nd, as things start to get hairy for the Union Army down on the other end of the battlefield, the Corps commander, who still thinks he's a wing commander, Henry Slocum, sends one division of the Corps that's up here under, well, what should have been under Alpheus Williams, was under Thomas Ruger, down toward the peach orchard and the area of the Trostel farm to try and shore things up there, because that's where things looked bad. Eventually decides, okay, we need to move the whole Corps down there, leaving literally nobody up on this hill. The other division commander, whose name is John Geary, he had been the territorial governor of Kansas before the war, and after the war would become governor of Pennsylvania, convinces Slocum and the technical corps commander, Alpheus Williams, we need to leave one brigade up there. We can't just totally abandon the hill. So they leave George Greene. Greene is 62 years old at the time of the battle, but he's also a very skilled old-time Army engineer. So he knows, we're on top of a hill, but we also want to make sure we have something to fight behind. So we spend some time building breastworks. And in this area right here, I actually can see a little ridge right in front of me. Move out a little bit so you can see a little better. This is one of the sections where breastworks are still quite visible up here on Culp's Hill. During the morning and early afternoon of July 2nd, Geary had been kind of derisive toward Greene for having his men build breastworks. Greene, being the old Army engineer, doesn't listen and keeps doing it anyway. And eventually the breastwork is going to extend all the way down the top slope of Culp's Hill, and as you look behind me here, down toward the lower slope. However, once everybody starts leaving, Greene's brigade is left up here with an awful lot of trench line to cover. So he's going to build what's called a traverse. Down here you get a really good view of the breastworks coming down off the upper slope of Culp's Hill and heading toward the lower slope, which you see in front of me. You see a little dip in between the two sections of the hill. When Greene realizes he has to cover all this trench line but has nowhere near enough men to do so, he's going to make what's called a traverse. Instead of trying to cover all the breastworks going up this hill all the way around there, he instead is going to make a shorter line of breastworks coming across here, starting where that little mound of dirt is, past the 14th Brooklyn Monument, and continuing on down there. Making this new line of trenches was actually a really, really good idea for Greene, because once the sun starts setting on July 2nd, the Confederates start coming. For the top section of the hill, that's held by what's left of the First Corps, including famous brigades under Solomon Meredith, Lysander Cutler. They're going to be attacked by brigades of Virginians and Louisianians. They hold because, again, the breastworks up there, you've got one of the best engineers in the Army building them, so they're going to be really, really good. Section down here, though, is going to be attacked by a rare mixed brigade in the Army of Northern Virginia. Most brigades in the Army of Northern Virginia, they're easy to tell because they're all one state. The brigade attacking us here is going to be one battalion, not even a full regiment, from Maryland, 3 regiments from Virginia, and 1 from North Carolina. They're all under the command of a general from Maryland named George Stewart, spelled slightly different than the Confederate cavalry commander. Also, to distinguish him from the cavalry commander, he earns the nickname Maryland Stewart. Maryland Stewart's men are going to hit the lower slope of Culp's Hill and start coming up toward this section here. The 137th New York Infantry is the far right-hand regiment in Greene's brigade, and they're going to have an awful lot of ground to cover. They're also very near and dear to my heart. If you travel through Binghamton, New York on Conklin Avenue, you will see a marker for Camp Susquehanna, which is where the 137th first trained. The colonel of this regiment was originally from New York City but settled in Binghamton. His name was David Ireland. Ireland's work tonight is at least as good, if not better, than what Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain is known for doing over on Little Round Top. Why is Ireland less better known? I have my own theories. First of all, Ireland is an immigrant. Chamberlain is a native-born New Englander. Ireland's fairly soft-spoken. Chamberlain is a college professor and would eventually go into politics. Chamberlain lives until 1914. Ireland is going to die the next year down in Georgia. The Confederate focus on July 2nd was on their right wing, launching a flank attack against what would later be known as the Peach Orchard, Devil's Den, Little Round Top, etc. The Confederate troops facing Culp's Hill were only to demonstrate or pretend to attack. They had the choice to make a real attack if it looked like they could be successful. Late in the afternoon of July 2nd, they tried to shell the Union right from Benner's Hill. As Benner's Hill was lower than Culp's or Cemetery Hill and had no trees to cover the soldiers there, it went very badly and cost the Confederates one of their best up-and-coming artillery officers, Joseph Latimer. Despite this, the attack would go on. The division making the attack was led by a general from Virginia named Edward Johnson. I recall a historian once saying that it helped during the Civil War to have a good nickname, and Johnson had two. Allegheny Ed, based on his early command in the war in Western Virginia, and Old Clubby, due to his preference to lead with a big stick instead of a sword. Johnson would send 3 brigades up Culp's Hill, from right to left. They were led by John M. Jones, Jesse Williams, and George Stewart. Although he had a penchant for drunkenness that earned him the nickname Rummy, Jones had taken command of this brigade a few days before from John R. Jones. Yeah, that's not confusing. Who was still with the Army, but was in the process of being fired for repeated cowardice. John R. Jones would end up captured during the retreat from Gettysburg, but the Confederates refused to exchange anyone for him, effectively telling the Union, "You can keep him." The next brigade in line was from Louisiana, and was under a temporary commander, Jesse Williams, as the regular commander, Francis Nichols, lost his foot back in May.
"'Tis but a scratch."
If you have ever hiked up the northeast slope of Culp's Hill from East Confederate Avenue, you realize a few things. First off, it's very steep. There's a lot of odd rocks and brush there, and it's a very tough hike. Now imagine doing that, running at full speed, being shot at, and being soaking wet because you just went through a creek. This is what Jones and Williams's brigade had to go through. It didn't go well for them, needless to say. It would go much better, though, for Johnson's last brigade. Throughout the late evening and night of July 2nd, 1863, The Confederate forces under Maryland Stewart are going to keep coming up this hill and attacking the 137th New York. Ireland is really good about moving his soldiers around to the exact point where the pressure is being applied. And he, with not a lot of men, is able to hold the attack all night. Should the attack have even been there, though, that's another question. One of the things that makes Gettysburg different from the Confederate point of view from, say, Antietam, is that there's always an idea that the battle is very, very winnable if only something goes different. I often use those two words to describe Gettysburg from the Southern Lost Cause point of view, if only. On the night of July 2nd, there actually are a couple pretty plausible if only moments. One of them being Rand's Wright's attack for the center of the Union line on Cemetery Ridge, and the other one being George Stewart's attack on Culp's Hill. Okay. All those soldiers from Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, they've swept through prepared lines of defense back behind me here. Come up through the little saddle between the two sections of Culp's Hill and are attacking the line behind me. I'll discuss that big rock in a moment. The problem is, was it a good idea? What they don't realize is that the Union Army, pretty much the entire right flank of the whole Union Army, ends right around here. Sorry. Ends like right there. Why that's important is if they kept going farther to their left is the Baltimore Pike. The Baltimore Pike is the main line of retreat for the Union Army. If they cut that off, the Union Army is in serious, serious, serious trouble. Also, there is a big chunk of the reserve artillery and most of the supplies for the Union Army. They capture that, they have crippled the Army of the Potomac. You might ask, why don't they do this? Remember when they are attacking. They've attacked this after dark. It's a rare night fight in the Civil War. They're coming up this hill because that's where they see the Union soldiers are. That's where they're going to attack. There's no guide telling them very nicely, and off to your left, you'll notice the rear of the Union Army. They don't have that luxury. They think this is where they should be attacking. Later, they'll come to the realization precisely what they could have done. Could they have really pulled it off, though? Remember, we are talking pitch black through here. "137th is not alone. In the middle where the traverse used to be, you'll see a boulder here that they placed a memorial to the 14th Brooklyn Regiment. More properly, it's the 84th New York. It's the only regiment named after a city rather than the state. It is also the only regiment that is going to be used all 3 days of the battle. July 1st, they're attacking at the railroad cut. July 2nd, July 3rd, they're fighting right here. It's a brutally hard fight for the 137th New York, but they hold off the Confederates. They're able to stay here all night and keep fighting them off through the next day when the rest of the 12th Corps rejoins them and pushes everybody off the hill. The 137th would eventually go out west with the rest of the 12th Corps and the 11th Corps and serve out their time in Georgia. And as I mentioned before, sadly, Colonel Ireland doesn't make it home to Binghamton, except in a box. He's currently buried at a Spring Forest Cemetery in Binghamton.